Phil Steele, who is the godfather of predicting college football, the Bible of college football, preseason, the Phil Steele Football Magazine, the author, the founder, is joining us on the Chuck and Bo Show. Phil, the pleasure is ours. We're happy you're here. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you gentlemen doing this morning?
Never better.
Are doing great.
Never better.
We're excited about this, Phil. We've been looking forward to it all week.
Phil, I've told the story. I've told the story in the studio about 8 times this week. 1995, I get a copy of a magazine from some fella named Phil Steele with a letter saying he's open for interviews. And I can remember having you on the show. It had to have been the first year. I think 95 was your first year. Is that right?
That's right, 1995, okay. The first year.
Wow. That's well, it's great to
what
visit
a reunion.
with you again. I know.
Hey, yeah. by the way, I greatly appreciate you having me on back then. It really helped start the magazine out. Remember back then there was probably, about 30 college football magazines on the market at that time?
There weren't very many. No. And back then you'd get a free copy of all of them with a cover letter saying so-and-so's available for interviews.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different now.
And Phil has withstood the test of time because he is more accurate than anyone when it comes to predicting college football. So, Phil, let's just jump right in. What do you think of Arkansas this year?
Well, I think that, Pittman did a good job last year getting them to a bowl. They're playing a killer schedule once again. I rate it the third toughest schedule in the entire country. But, you look at quarterback, they got Taylon Green back this year. Green started out last year a little slow. Hit 49% with a 4.4 ratio his first 5 games, but then 65%, 11 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions after that. I think he really blended in with the Bobby Petrino offense. I like the running back core. They're deeper than they've been with Mike Washington coming in from New Mexico State, Braylon Russell, and Rodney Hill. You look at them up front on the offensive line. Pittman knows offensive lines, and I think they've got a good one this year. And defensively, Xavier Sori coming back at linebacker. I think he's an NFL caliber dude. And this is an Arkansas team that can pretty much compete with anybody. I remember 2 years ago, they went through that gauntlet, at LSU, Texas A&M on the road, at Mississippi, at Alabama, and they almost won 3 of those games. So Pittman always pulls the upsets. Now, you look at this year's schedule, they're going to be an underdog at Mississippi, home to Notre Dame, at Tennessee, home to Texas A&M possibly, at LSU and at Texas. So there's going to be plenty of games. Vegas over under 5.5, but I like the over on that. I think Pittman pulls an upset or two, and I like what he's doing with the program. I wish they'd be playing Missouri's schedule one of these years.
Yeah, no kidding. It seems like they draw this on a routine basis. How much does the transfer portal impact, and not only what you do, I can only imagine what that's like, and I'm curious for you how that's been, but what you know about the transfer portal as it relates to Arkansas and how you think it might impact this team.
Well, first of all, I can tell you that this 2 portal thing has got to go. If we go to 1 portal, I'll be a happy camper. And, I start my coaches' conversations. They generally say, how you doing, Phil? And I started after the portal closed. And I'm like, a lot better now that the portal's closed. And then the coach chimes in and says, oh, you and me both. So, I mean, it's this year I can't tell you how many players came into teams in the winter and then left after spring practice was over. So it's getting to be a little bit on the ridiculous side. But, Pittman's doing what he has to do as far as the portal goes. They lose some players to the portal and are replenishing with them. I think he's doing a good job covering or bringing guys in. I do think the best teams this year are going to be the ones that are homegrown. I think the ones that, the freshmen have turned into sophomores, juniors, and have all played there. You look at Clemson last year, for example. They used the portal, but very little. Most of the players were recruited by Clemson, played at Clemson, and they have a great team atmosphere and a cohesion. You go to the Big 12, team like Iowa State under Matt Campbell, they lose very little players, almost all the players homegrown. Ohio State won the national title last year. They had some transfers, but the majority of the team were recruited by Ohio State. Army and Navy had big years last year. So I think there's something to be said for the teams that, don't have to hit the portal so hard. But in Arkansas's case, Sam Pittman's had to hit the portal because of the players they've lost to it.
Phil, a little bit bigger picture question here. We've talked about Arkansas being in a group in the SEC that's trying to burst out of the pack, so to speak. It is hard to crack the glass ceiling in our league. Why do you think it's been difficult for Arkansas and maybe some of the other schools too?
Well, I think in Arkansas's case, at least recently, I mean, it has been the schedule. You take a look at a team, and I threw out Missouri as an example. Missouri plays the best schedule in the SEC. They avoid a ton of the big boys, play very few of them, and they've had double-digit wins the last couple of years. I think when you take a look at Arkansas, Missouri, look at the Arkansas-Missouri game last year. I mean, I thought Arkansas was going to win that thing in the fourth quarter. It was a snowy game, and then Missouri ends up winning it close, but there wasn't much difference between the two schools last year, and yet Missouri was 10-3 and Arkansas was 7-6, and a lot of that was due to the schedule. So I think the schedule is a big thing. And let's take a look at Texas and Oklahoma. You know, those two teams came in from the Big 12. Texas played one of the best schedules in the SEC. Oklahoma played one of the toughest schedules, and look at the record of the two teams. So schedule has a lot to do with it. I know the SEC hasn't released their schedule for 2026 yet, but I'm hoping that Arkansas gets a break next year.
Yeah, well, I think everybody here is hoping the same thing because it hasn't happened. And you made an interesting point there, Phil, about the schedule really impacting how a fan feels about their team. Missouri ends up feeling a whole lot better. And granted, they won that game. I don't know how much better Arkansas fans would have felt about the entire season if they had won the game. But outside of them playing each other, you're saying that Arkansas has not been much different than they have, or some other teams. Their schedule's just been more difficult. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. If you took Arkansas and played them against Missouri's schedule last year, record would have been better. So, I mean, it's just the way it comes out sometimes, and schedule is a big thing in college football. So,
is there a surprise team? Who's your dark horse in the SEC this year?
Yeah, I got one for you. A team that was 6-7 last year that I think could make the playoff, and that is Oklahoma. And when I went over the team with Coach Venables, went over the roster at the end of the phone call. I'm like, damn, that's a playoff roster. And, there was nothing wrong with the defense last year. They played a schedule like Arkansas, one of the toughest in the SEC. They basically played all the big boys. They only had 3 home games last year in the SEC play because Texas was at a neutral site. And yet the defense held opponents to 87 yards per game below their average, number 6 in the country. Nothing wrong with that defense. Venables knows defense. They got 8 starters back. They got elite players like our Mason Thomas. Then you look at them offensively last year. They had 0 returning starters on the offensive line. They lost their top 5 receivers to injury during the year. And it's no wonder that Jackson Arnold struggled at the quarterback position. Well, this year, they've got a veteran offensive line. Bill Bedenbaugh still there as the offensive line coach. He'll have a top-notch unit. I think they go from a weakness to a strength on the O-line. Same thing at receiver. And I'm going to compare it to Clemson 2 years ago. Clemson with Cade Klubnik 2 years ago struggled offensively. They were good, but they're not great. Klubnik had a 19-9 ratio, I believe. It's because all his receivers were banged up at the start of the year. Last year, they got all those receivers back. They added in some talent, and all of a sudden, Klubnik's thrown for nearly 40 touchdown passes with 6 interceptions. A lot of it had to do with the receiving core. That's going to be the same thing with Oklahoma. They get Deion Burks back. They add in some transfers. They get the injured players back. And then you look at the quarterback. John Mateer comes in from Washington State. He's a dangerous runner and thrower. And they bring the Washington State offense with them. Brent Arbuckle, the offensive coordinator. They add in Jaden Ott, who I thought was the best running back in the Pac-12 2 years ago. He was banged up last year, sort of a shell of himself. He's back to 100% healthy. So with a vastly improved offense and that defense, and now they only have 3 true SEC road games this year because Texas is at a neutral site. With the schedule's tough, but it's more manageable than last year. I think Oklahoma's actually got a shot at making the playoffs, so they would be my surprise. Wow. They are my number one surprise team in the country.
That's a surprise.
Yeah, and I'm hearing that from a few different sources now. All right, let me go on Arkansas' schedule real quick for a second. They go to Memphis, and because Phil Steele knows about every college football team, do you think Arkansas is favored and should win that game at Memphis?
Memphis, the thing about them, they are my pick. They're one of my picks they're my pick to win the American Conference this year. I know they lose their quarterback.
Well, that's encouraging.
Yeah. They got Brendan Lewis coming in at QB from Nevada, and Memphis has so much money, through the NIL that they could build a pretty good roster. And when you look at Memphis, they were the trendy pick to be the Group of 5 representative in the playoff last year, but I didn't have them because their toughest games were on the road last year, and they ended up losing a couple of those games. This year, their toughest games are at home, and they're almost unbeatable at home under Silverfield. He is 28-6 at home, so there's tougher team at home. But I like the fact it's early in the year. They've got a new quarterback. I think talent-wise, Arkansas is going to travel well there, so it's not like Memphis is going to have a massive home edge. So I think when you look at the game, I rate it right now a toss-up coming into the season. So that's a dangerous Memphis team.
All right, I want to go through a couple more Razorback opponents. Texas A&M is another one. They come to Fayetteville.
Yeah, I've got A&M, my number 2 surprise team this year. And, you know, when I talked to Coach Elko last year, and Elko pretty much tells it like it is, he told me about the offensive line last year. He said, Phil, we're middle of the pack in the SEC on the offensive line. This year when I'm talking to him about the offensive line, he says, Phil, we are at the top of the level of the SEC, and we're a candidate for the Joe Moore Award. So I like that when a coach tells it to you like it is. They've got Marcel Reed back at QB. They've got a veteran defense. Elko always gets the most out of his team. So I think that's going to be another game that I rate as a toss-up. I think A&M's a slightly better team this year. They're number 6 on my experience chart. They've got a lot of talent. Elko always gets the most, but Arkansas is at home. So that's going to be another one of those toss-up games for Arkansas.
And then right after that, they play Auburn at home, and I'm curious what you think about Auburn.
You know, Auburn is very few teams make my most improved list and don't go from a losing record to a bowl. Well, last year I had Auburn on my most improved list, and they actually went from minus 45 yards per game in SEC play. Every SEC game they were outgained by 45 yards per game. Last year they were plus 62 yards per game. So, yeah, they were vastly improved, but turnovers did them in. Well, if they can cut down on the turnovers, and I talked about Jackson Arnold and how he struggled at Oklahoma with no offensive line and no receivers, he's got to work with at Auburn, my number 12 rated offensive line, my number 6 set of receivers, and they've got a pretty good defense. So I think talent-wise, they're up there. I like the fact Arkansas is at home. I like the fact that Arkansas beat Auburn last year. So I've got Auburn a slight favorite in that game, about a 3.5-point favorite.
Now I got to ask, Phil, you've talked about A&M being a surprise team. You've talked about Oklahoma being a surprise team. That's going to come at the expense of somebody up toward the top, I would guess. I mean, who are the teams that maybe the consensus has them a little bit higher than you think they might be?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the one team would be a team that last year I was really bullish on this team. I had them ranked higher than everybody else at the start of the year, and that's South Carolina. I believe the South Carolina total last year in Vegas was 5.5, and they were picked at the lower part of the SEC, but I had them higher than everybody else. I loved their defensive front seven last year. It was absolutely dominant, and I thought Lenore Sellers was going to come in and star as a QB. I wish he would have stayed healthy against LSU. They would have picked up another win there. Sellers is back. I believe he was voted first team all-conference at SEC Media Days, and South Carolina's a playoff caliber team. However, the things that I don't like about South Carolina this year, number one is the defensive front seven. And give you an idea, I'm on the Joe Moore Award Committee, and we're having a conversation, one of our conference calls on offensive lines, and somebody pointed out that, this offensive line struggled against South Carolina. Another guy piped up and said, everybody's offensive line struggles against South Carolina. They have a great defensive front seven. Well, guess what? The majority of that front seven's gone. Yes, Dylan Stewart's back, but they lose 5 of their top 6 guys from the defensive line. So I think they're not going to be as dominant defensively. They do have Sellers back. There is talent. There's no doubt about it. But then you look at their schedule. They have to play Missouri on the road, LSU on the road, Mississippi on the road, A&M on the road. They also host Oklahoma. That's a game I think Oklahoma could steal. They host Alabama. I think they'll be an underdog there. They host Clemson, and they play Virginia Tech in the opener. So they play the 4th toughest schedule, and I think with a weaker defensive front seven, or not as dominant a defensive front seven, they actually take a step back this year. I've got them 10th in the SEC, which is way lower than everybody else, but it's partially due to that. I think people are looking at the quarterback, but I think you also have to look at the defensive front seven.
I know you got to get out of here, Phil, but I'm just curious, and you can go as short or as long as you want on this. LSU and Texas on the back end of Arkansas' schedule, are they what people think they are? Are they as tough as it looks like they will be?
Talent-wise, I think Texas might have the most talent in the SEC this year. My biggest question mark with them is the offensive line. They only have one starter back. They do have talented guys there. They, of course, got – you guys may have heard of this guy, Arch Manning. Have you heard of him?
A lot of hype. A lot of hype.
Yeah. Getting a lot of hype. To live up to his hype, I think he'd have to have 60 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions this year. I don't think that's going to happen, but he is going to have a really good year. I think he's a dangerous runner and passer. You look at him defensively, they might have the best defense in the country. I mean, Colin Simmons up front on the D-line with Trey Moore. Trey Moore is a guy they picked up from UTSA that was the American Defensive Player of the Year. Coach Traylor not happy about losing him. They've got Anthony Hill, one of the best defensive players in the country, a linebacker, Malik Muhammad at cornerback, Michael Taff at safety. They are loaded defensively. So they are an outstanding team. I didn't pick them to win the SEC because of the fact they have to play Georgia on the road, and they had some trouble getting past Georgia last year. They also play Florida in the Swamp, and they play Oklahoma and Dallas. They play Ohio State on the road in the opener. I think they might lose a game or two, but once they get to the playoff, as we saw with Ohio State last year, if you have all that talent, Arch Manning will be a veteran by then. They'll be a dangerous threat once the playoffs roll around. And with LSU, to me, a couple of keys for them. You have to look at the offensive line, which only has one starter back from last year. It's got to be the biggest question mark on the offense. Yes, they've got the quarterback. Garrett Neismeyer threw for 4,000 yards. He had 28 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Got to cut down on the interceptions. That was costly at times. But they've got the receiving core. Got to keep your eyes on is Chris Hilton. He was not 100% healthy. Got healthy the last couple games of the season. He's got blazing speed. I think they do have the impact there. They hit the transfer portal hard. They sold out 75,000 season tickets. They've got Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks at linebacker, Patrick Payton up front on the D-line. They do have talent, but there are two. When you look at the schedule, they got to play Bama on the road. They've got to play Oklahoma on the road, and they've got to play Ole Miss on the road. Those are three pretty tough games, and of course Clemson in the opener. I think the pressure's on Brian Kelly this year. A lot of folks are calling for the playoff. I actually have Oklahoma making the playoff over LSU this year.
Great stuff, Phil. We could go on all day.
You,
we know you
great.
do. Thanks for getting us in your busy schedule. We appreciate it.
Hey, I always love talking football. And, hey, great to be back on with you guys again. We should do this more often.
Let's do it
it's been
again.
quite some time since we chatted.
Let's do it again sometime during the season. Thanks, Phil.
That's
all the
terrific.
best to you. Good luck with the magazine.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a good one.
You too. Phil Steele, always the same, every time. Knows, like encyclopedia, just bam.